Okay, so word problems. These are problems with words. Um, so these are the hardest parts of any kind of maths exam. It's really figuring out what kind of maths to do for any one given question. So it's a good idea to read it really carefully, figure out what information is given in the question. Most of the time, all of the information in the question you'll need, but sometimes there might be extra information in the question you don't need, just to trick you. Just like in all the rest of the world, there will be all kinds of information you don't need, and you need to decide which one's important. But critically, figure out what it is that you are being asked to find out. Okay, so what is known and what is the specific unknown that you're being asked. Yeah, so what is that you're being asked? And then this is when the math starts to come in. Okay, so just assign those things that you know and you don't know variables. So you can use numbers for things that you know, but sometimes it's a lot easier and simpler if you can just represent those as variables, do the maths that you think you're going to have to do, and then plug in the variables at the end, because that might help simplify things. Okay, and then this is the hard part. Basically, find a formula between your knowns and unknowns. Okay, and then solve those. Then basically do the maths, which you should be able to do, hopefully. If you can't do them, then search on the internet for how to do that. Or if you're in an exam, go through the notes that you're allowed to take into the exam to figure all that stuff out. Okay, and then once you end up with an answer, check it's reasonable. Okay, so that could be if it's asking you to calculate a real world parameter, then check that makes sense. Like if you calculate the age of the Earth, you don't get kind of 4 minutes or a trillion years. But also, it's a good idea to basically plug your answer back into one of the equations that you first started with to see if you do get you can recreate some of the information that you were given at the beginning, as a kind of a check to make sure that you've done stuff right. Okay, so an example. Okay, so the sum of two consecutive numbers is equal to 87. So what are the two numbers? So let's think now about how we might do that. I'm just going to give myself a pen. Okay, so we're going to say we're going to have two numbers that we don't know. So our numbers are going to be A and B. Okay, and then one of these numbers are consecutive. So one of them, I'm just going to say, is equal to the other number, A plus 1. Okay, so that means that they're one away from each other. That fulfills the information given in the question. They're two consecutive numbers. The other piece of information you're given is that when you add them together, A plus B, okay, that is equal to 87. Okay. So then what you can do is, now we've got our question written out as equations, we can go through and solve those equations. So in this case we've got two equations. We've basically got equation 1 and equation 2. Okay, and I have got equation 1 it basically gives me in this case the value of B expressed as A. So I can basically replace in equation 2 B with this expression here for A. So that A plus 1. So I can rewrite that A plus, instead of B now, I can have plus A plus 1. It might help if you put that in brackets, in case it doesn't really matter in this case, but it's good practice. And that equals 87. Okay, so we can then multiply this bracket, which is essentially A plus 1 times A plus 1, so that is just A plus A, 1A plus 1 times 1 is 1, and that is also equal to 87. Okay, we can then simplify that. A plus A is 2A, plus 1 is equal to 87. And then I'm just going to take 1 from both sides. So always doing the same thing to both sides. So 1 minus 1 is going to be 0, so that's going to go away. It's going to be 87, 7 minus 1, okay, which is equal to 86. Okay, then I can just divide both sides by 2. As long as I divide everything by 2, then that's all fine. Divide the middle by 2. For completeness, so then that cancels, giving us A equals 86 divided by 2, which is 43. Okay, and then I can work out the value of B because I have an equation for B up here, so I can then plug our answer for A into B. So then B equals 43 plus 1, which is equal to 44. Okay, so now I've got two answers. I've found out the answer for A and I found out the answer for B. Now what I want to do is check that I've got the right answer. So I've got a spare equation here, A plus B, just check that those do give 87. So 43 plus 44, that does equal 87. So I've gone through the steps there to show that I've got the right answer. Okay, so the 4 consecutive numbers equal to 14. Same process, go through there. I'll just give myself a white thingy. We could go through and say we've got 4 numbers, A, B, C and D. In this case they're consecutive numbers, so that B would be A plus 1 and then plus 2 and plus 3. Okay. So you could have worked these out separately as different equations, that C equals B plus 1 and D equals C plus 1, but then you'd have to then substitute in the previous equation for it to then work out the next one. I mean, let's just do that. So if I'd have instead said C equals B plus 1, I would then, to work out what C was just in terms of A, I would then have to say C is equal to A plus 1, which is got from this equation here, and plus 1. Okay, and that then simplifies out to A plus 2. Okay, and then the other piece of information I have is A plus B plus C plus D equals, what was it, 14. Okay, so in this case we could then plug all of these equations here into this equation here and get A plus 1 plus A plus 2 plus A plus 3 equals 14. Okay, so we simplify that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 A's, and then 1 plus 2 plus 3, so that can be simplified to 4A plus 6 equals 14. Okay, and then we could then take 6 from both sides. 4A equals 14 minus 6 is 8. Yep, and then we divide both sides by 4. Okay, which equals 2, and that would equal A. So A equals 2, and then we can say A into these equations at the top again, up here. So we then say B is A plus 2 plus 1, which is 3, so B 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. We add those together, we can check our answer, we got the right one, we get 14, which is what we were looking for, which is nice. Okay, so there's more examples here that you can work through. Okay, so 7 consecutive numbers is equal to 7. Okay, so you can see straight out that this is a little bit more tricky to get your head around, but you'll end up with some negative numbers if you just work through the equations as as I've just done for the other thingy. So have a go at that in your own time. More word examples, which we can go through in the lecture. Okay, I'm going to stop there.